Hi, my name is Dan Sanguinetti, and this is Film Rhapsody. On this week's episode of Film Rhapsody, I sat down with filmmaker, animator, and Canberra film industry icon Marissa Martin. But first, I welcome back Russell to the mic to get a lowdown of another feature project that is currently in development at Sanguineti Media. Hello, Russell. Welcome back to Film Rhapsody.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for having me back on our show.
Now, in the last few weeks, we've made some significant developments on a project that has been gestating for some time, and this is something that I felt it was really important to share with our audience, particularly if there is emerging or developing screenwriters out there who might want to learn a little bit more about the process of interacting with a producer. Now, I'll openly admit all producers work in different ways when it comes to developing content, but a process that has grown here at Sanguineti Media that I actually I love this process, and that is organising a script reading with actors to essentially perform the script as a sort of form of proof of concept or field testing dialogue or scenes and ideas and things like that. And so I believe, Russell, you've taken that on board, that you know that I really appreciate that process. And so you've independently organised the script reading recently and conveniently invited me along. Now, I want to assure all our listeners that Alice is still the number one priority, even though, we've got a number of projects on our slate. Obviously, we've got Wombat Man that's still in production. We've got this podcast that we're doing on a weekly basis, as well as our other web series at the Phoenix that is moving along in post-production. But we've been discussing about how to continue building Sanguineti Media's production slate. So tell us all about it. What is this new project that has been growing inside you for some time? And you presented to me recently and got me quite excited about it and wanting to make it.
Okay, well, this has been around for about 4 years now. Back in 2015, the two of us met during a thing called the Accelerator Pod, which was basically this initiative put together by Screen Canberra, Silver Sun Pictures, and Odin's Eye as a way of getting a bunch of writers together to come up with concepts for low-budget films, at the end of which they will select 4 films to go into production.
Yeah.
One of the films has just come out in the cinema, The Furies by Tony DeCino. On the last day of class, I was sort of sitting around and I started wondering about, okay, how can I come up with a film idea that is relatively easy to do, doesn't cost a lot of money, and has promise for good returns for the investors?
Yeah.
And I came up with an idea that was sort of built off Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, and Paranormal Activity has been this franchise that has been created from so little. Like the films don't cost that much money to make at all, but they've made millions.
The first one cost 15 grand, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think they cost a lot more now because they factor in the marketing and they kind of work on a much larger scale because obviously those involved with it know that they make a lot of money, so they take a bigger chunk this time. But yes, and
they just announced this week Paranormal Activity 7.
Oh my god! Yeah. Well, congratulations to those producers because they've set themselves up with a franchise that possibly could never end.
That is possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So continue to tell us more about where this idea. So it's kind of paranormal activity, but what sets it apart?
Well, the idea was basically to do something with found footage, but to get rid of the tropes that just annoyed me and I guess a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Most notably, looking back at Paranormal Activity, there were several scenes where something was happening off screen, but the boyfriend character would, have to grab the camera and take that with him because if he didn't grab the camera, there's no movie.
Yeah. So it became a lot sort of like a unnatural thing that people do with regards to video cameras.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're running from, a giant monster in Cloverfield. You're not going to be like, oh shit, I better keep it in frame.
Yeah. I mean, if you search YouTube, it's so rare to find like big disaster moments that are, kept perfectly still. I mean,
because natural human emotions kicking, you're freaking out, the adrenaline's going. You're not thinking of, the perfect picture, the perfect frame.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get rid of that and heavily script it. Paranal Activity was completely ad-libbed. I think they went in with a overall idea of what the story would be, but when it came down to scenes and shooting scenes, the actors in question just basically ad-libbed their stuff.
Yeah.
So the idea for my script was basically, okay, come up with a simple 2 or 3 person play that happens to be a film. The story is about a young girl in her 20s. Her marriage has just ended, and so she's moving into an apartment by herself. She's been suffering from mental health problems for a long time, and as soon as she's in the house, she sort of succumbs to those mental health problems. She can't leave the house because of her agoraphobia. What she doesn't know is that someone's watching her. So the idea is basically taking something that is mundane, like someone just alone in their house, turning that on its head. So it's basically this psychological drama about isolation and what it can do to a person. The longer you're alone, the longer you allow yourself to focus on your problems, to obsess over your fears, obsess over what happened to you, to ruminate on these problems. Now, it's something I have dealt with in the last few years, and it's something the character will deal with. And it's, I think, something that a lot of people we found with the script reading connect with, especially the young women living alone and how that can basically get to you.
You showed us a video to help sort of explain what this story is about. This video you found on the internet. We're not sure if it's authentic, but I don't think that matters because what this video does makes...
It's very powerful, isn't it?
It's very, and it sets exactly what this film could possibly be. So what happens in this video?
So basically, what happens in the video is a guy has been waking up every day to find food missing from his fridge. Yeah. He assumes that it's his girlfriend, that she's got up in the middle of the night and she's sleep eating or something like that.
Yeah, and she insists.
Yeah, she says, it's not at all, not me, stop blaming me, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So he sets up a video camera one night to film the fridge and to see what's going on. What he finds is a woman crawling down from his attic, hatch, whatever you call it, yeah. And basically helping herself to food, to watching a bit of TV, to relieving herself in his sink, and at one point even coming very close to being caught by him before she crawls back up into the crawl space and is gone. So I remember seeing this video, and I have a crawl space in my house. I'm sure you have one. I'm sure most of our listeners have one. So the idea of someone being up there in this area of the house that we don't go up to.
And that there could be somebody there.
Someone there.
Who's watching us.
And I remember seeing that video going, wow, there's a movie. It's stuck with me for 4 years.
You put together the script reading so that you could essentially present the film to me so I could get a sense of what it is, because you sent me a version of the script, and I read it, but I didn't show huge enthusiasm for it.
You didn't quite get it yet?
I didn't quite understand what the project was, because the script on its own can only say so much. It was a process that really helped me understand some of the intricacies of the deeper story elements that you were trying to put together in the project. Tell us a bit about how you put the script reading together.
Well, I approached one of our friends who's been working with us on Alice, and asked if she'd be interested in reading it. This was a 5-minute conversation that took 2 months to take place over Facebook chat. God bless her. But eventually we got it done.
Yeah.
She suggested a few friends, and before I know it, we had pretty much everyone involved. Yeah. At the same time, I've been talking to another one of our friends about maybe coming on as DOP. Because I guess one of the better things about you sort of not taking to it straight away is that I took it on more than I would normally do. Yeah. I've always considered myself a writer, and I was content to just be a writer. Yeah. And just let the filmmakers do their thing with me, taking your work and taking it to the next step. So you took initiative to actually go, well, I'm going to go out of my comfort zone. Yeah. I'm going to just get it done because I want to get this done. Yeah. And through that, I decided I wanted to direct it. For the most part, it's a pretty simple story. In theory, it should hopefully be reasonably simple to shoot. It's certainly not to the level of Alice. Alice is much more complicated. So I figured, okay, this is a good way for me to start testing the waters to see if I'm good at directing a film and also producing. And if you wanted to come along somewhere down the track, cool. If not, I'll just do this by myself for the first time. First and foremost, I needed to hear the script read out loud. I needed to know if the the jokes would land, if the drama worked, if certain lines that could potentially be problematic or unrealistic actually read right. And we accomplished that.
Yeah, and I think the lesson that comes out of that process is that, writers should embrace more than just the words on their script.
Yeah.
I mean, a script is great, and a script should be a blueprint, but to get things moving forward, a little bit more has to be done.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great to go off and shoot a proof of concept or some other thing, but the cheapest option is just get some actors together and say, here's a script, come along, listen to it. It's an easy and cheap way of basically getting a sense of what your film can be. And it's a process that I feel that I would encourage a lot of emerging writers to actually go out there and meet with actors to basically perform the script.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads to one last thing before we go and have a chat with Marissa Martin. We are planning something for this podcast for closer to Christmas.
Yes, we are. A little Christmas present.
What are we doing?
For our Christmas episode, we're basically going to be unveiling the Alice script, or at least part of it.
Yeah.
We're going to be bringing in some actors. We're going to be doing a radio play of the first 14 scenes. We're going to bring it to life and give basically the audience a bit of a taste of what the movie's like.
And we feel that this is an important process to essentially give potential supporters and investors an idea of what we're doing. Just like we did with the proof of concept trailer, this is our next level of proof of concept.
Yeah.
Have a sense of what the film would be. So we'll have a pacing, we'll have music, we'll have sound effects.
We'll get to know the characters a bit. And we hopefully will get people excited about the film that we want to make. Yeah, they can share our excitement. We're very excited about unveiling this. We're also very terrified, but hey, what the hell? You can't sit on your writing forever. We're going to unveil and hopefully have a Christmas miracle.
So stay tuned for that podcast. We're hopefully in about 5 weeks from now, around December 13th.
Around that, yep.
Next up, we move to my chat with Marissa Martin from earlier this year, where I began the conversation talking about our guest from 2 weeks ago, Hugh Sanderson, and his award-winning Lights, Camera, Action films.
You look at things like the films that Hugh Sanderson makes.
Yeah, they're quite bleak and have a very strong political message to it as well. And I talked quite a bit with Hugh about that. So I think a thing that I definitely took away from films that particularly that Hugh produced were he always had a message or a story that needed to be said.
He had something to say.
Yeah, and I think that's why I thought his films were some of the strongest to go through. Is because he actually wanted to tell something important.
Yeah.
Whatever the idea was.
He had a reason for the films had reasons.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. I mean, I love a good, film that's just fun. But a film that has something to say is something that will stay with you longer because you'll keep thinking about it and you'll keep mulling it over in your mind. And so Hugh's films, apart from being technically exceptional, had that in them, that they were, I don't want to say enjoyable, but they were satisfying from a viewer's point of view because they were a complete little, story. And it had something important to share. Hugh has a political mindset and he's interested in social welfare and all those sorts of things, and that's why that comes through his work.
Do you get jealous that you can't make films for LCA? And we can talk about Flicker Fest in a moment because I think that's a pretty exciting, important thing that we should mention. But do you feel if you were able to enter, you would be making a film every year like everyone else?
I certainly would have in the first couple of years. Yeah. Absolutely. I was, when we first made it, I was a young filmmaker. I was keen to make films. I wanted opportunities like this. Absolutely. Probably for the first 10 years, I would have. Last couple of years, maybe, I'm old now, so I'm tired. But possibly because having a deadline and having a focus is really great for creativity in a lot of ways. I mean, I ran Canberra Short Film Festival for 5 years, and every year I was jealous I couldn't enter that, because that meant that was I could make a film any time during the year and submit that, whereas Lights Canberra is more intense. But, I was making films that I couldn't enter. I was making, films that I was putting a lot of effort into, a lot of money into, that were doing well all over the place, but couldn't screen in Canberra. Yeah. And that's because I was running Lights Canberra Short seasons and Canberra Short. Yeah. And that's just because no one else would. Yeah. But thankfully, Canberra Short has found its new home with Silver Sun and John Frolick, and they've managed to keep it going for many years now, which is fantastic. Yeah. Short seasons, unfortunately, ran its course. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I would, because it would be fun. Yeah. I know people who make films for Lights Canberra because it's fun and it's the only time they make a film and they know they've got a deadline and they're super excited, and it's just a way to do something and have it finished. Yeah.
So I guess why I asked that, because I think you're a very talented filmmaker.
Oh, thank you.
Tegan the Vegan is one of my favourite animations. And I'm so glad you got to post it, because I got to see it again recently. But it was good timing, because obviously you finished
Della
another
Morte.
short film. Yeah, you've taken out a pretty major award for it, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Flickerfest is, I think, an aspiration for a lot of filmmakers. If it's not Tropfest, it's probably Flickerfest. But it took you 7 years. Yeah. And for me, and this is part of where me wanting to do this podcast is about, is I'm so determined this year to make content on a regular basis so I get better. Yeah. I would have found it so frustrating to have been in your position where you're running an incredible festival and you can't enter it. And you're working on this animation that it was exciting years ago when you talked about it and when you shared bits about it, and now to hear that it is getting adored and loved and winning a major award, to me that I would be frustrated. I would be like, for you, what? Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to understand
how I kept going.
How you kept going. I know you've been working, around the cities and working on projects and things. So I guess you've not stopped. But for me, I'm trying to find a place where I'm content with what I'm doing and feel that I'm doing the right thing and I'm making progress and growing as much as possible. How's that work for you? And
yeah, the thing is, animation is so different in a lot of ways because it's so time intensive and everything is slower. I did make, I've made a few things while I've been making this film. So I've made video clips and I've made other short films that have done okay and such, but nothing with the sort of, intention that Della Morte had. Yeah. So Della Morte is a steampunk film, so that, you can imagine what that means in terms of production design. Yeah. Huge amounts of design. And I think when we first started on it, and we took it to Project Pod, Screen Canberra's Project Pod, this was 8 years ago. And we started developing it into a much larger project. We really developed the characters to a point where, Mum and I were like, because my mother worked on it with me, we're like, we love these girls so much, we're ready to spend the next decade with them. Yeah. And it would have been nice to do more with them than just the one film, but the money ran out. So we did all the bulk of the original filming and all of the acting, all of the voice recording, all of that early on, and then we spent the next sort of year or so making it, but then the arts grant ran out, so it was a matter of I need to work now and then I'll get back to it, work, get back to it. When I made Tegan, I was fortunate enough that I was able to work three days a week every week for 6 months, and then we shot it in that time. so I had 2 days a week of paid work that was enough to keep me, pay my bills. And then I could spend 3 full days a week shooting. And then I would spend almost every evening doing post on it, or building the next set, or, making tiny props and stuff. Whereas this film, I had family commitments and life gets in the way and all those sorts of things, which meant that I couldn't work on it as intensely as I worked on Tegan. And I had to spread it out. But every time I looked at it again, I would go, it's so beautiful. Yeah. And that's what kept me going. Yeah. Yeah. I would look at a frame and go, gee, it's pretty. Gee, we've made magic here and I just need to tidy it up, or you need to do the edit, or there was a time, it was about 2 years ago, we thought we were finished and I showed it to some people and the feedback was there was a story point missing here, a bit of a plot hole here, a scene that we'd cut out, probably had to go back. So then it took us 2 years to shoot those extra scenes. We actually wrote a scene to fill that plot hole. And so it was a bit of, we thought we were done. And then, but I really wanted it to be perfect. Because I remember, years ago when Electric Shadows closed. They had their Evolution Film Festival, and I was lucky enough to have a retrospective of my short work played then. And watching some of them made me cringe. Some of them I was like, oh no, because they were student films or films that I'd made just out of school or something, and I would cringe occasionally when something happened on screen, and I just thought to myself at that time, I never want to cringe again. When I watch my work, I want to be sitting there going, this is so good. And so Tegan was the first film I made after that, and I'm really proud of Tegan. And I watched that film and go, yeah, it's gorgeous, and I wanted the same experience here. And so that's what made it take so long. I spent 6 months tidying frames, digitally tidying up frames and putting smoke in and steam in. And if something wasn't right, I would reshoot it, or I would, get in there and CG fix it, because I wanted to be super proud of the work. I wanted it to be as perfect as it could be. So that's why it took so long.
But that I think is probably why now it will be remembered and it was worth it. And I think, I find as well to hear that you actually went back and redid things, and that's what added more time. That is a big thing for me that I've encouraged on student filmmakers that I work with, or those I'm mentoring, and going, you should go back. And it's very easy, and because I as a student would be like, nah, it's done, move on. But having that critical analysis of yourself to go, it is not quite there, and you should have the time to go back, because it's important to making sure everything is working and everything is there. And it is something I want to learn better, and I want to be able to have that opportunity. I've just got one last question, and just sort of get a piece of advice, I guess. There are filmmakers out there who have either done student work or they're looking to make the next step. What word of advice could you give, apart from obviously, give it your best shot, get out there, do it. Is there something that from your past where you've realised, oh, that was a mistake or something like that, where you could, you could go back and tell yourself?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, when I before I made Tegan, so I was a live action filmmaker. I still am a live action filmmaker. I'm lucky enough to have received a Screen ACT grant this year, Screen Canberra. So I'll be making another film this year, which is very exciting. But the reason I got into animation was because my life was out of control and I needed to control on something, and you can control everything in an animation. And it suited my particularness. But that said, you can make the most beautiful, flashy, exciting, technically amazing film. If it doesn't connect with the audience, they'll get bored and they won't pay any attention. And I've watched a lot of short films, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And the ones that connect with judges are often the ones that come from something real. And whether it comes from a personal experience of the filmmaker or just something that is quite easily relatable, that the audience can then relate to themselves, that is so important.
Yeah.
So when I went to make Tegan, I thought, well, I'm tired of making films, you know, that are cool or whatever, because that was the sort of films I was making before that. Things that were kind of interesting and, you know, backwards films and single shot films and stuff that were difficult, and certainly satisfying in some way, but they were doing all right at festivals, but I wanted to go that next level up. And I thought, well, I need to make, if I can only make one story, what do I want to say? What's the most important thing for me to share with the world? If I can only say one thing, what is it? And for me, vegetarianism, veganism is really important. And so I thought, I'm going to make a film about a little vegan girl. And how hard she finds it in a meat-eating world.
Yeah.
And that's where Tegan came from. And it came from a really personal, meaningful place. And even though the story is not my story exactly, and I've added in lots of comedy and a romantic storyline and all sorts of stuff, it started from a really true place in me. And Della Morte is kind of similar in that it's about three sisters, and it's about their relationship with each other, and it's about how important family is, and it's about how, you know, with a strong family bond, you know, you can do something awful to your sister and she will still love you. And she will still forgive you, and you'll still be able to, you know, move on together. That bond is stronger than bad behaviour, or a small amount of bad behaviour anyway. And again, it's, you know, I was really excited by the visual style and the style of animation, the paper cutouts and all of that, but it came back to, it's about family. And they're the films that speak to people, because there's always someone else out there. A lot of people who saw Tegan said it was just about being different, and a woman said, because she's deaf, and she said to me that she saw it and recognised herself as the girl who was being teased because she was different. And it didn't matter that it was about, you know, food. For her, it was about her difference, which was deafness. And likewise, Della Morte, people, sure, it's about, you know, there's a boy and two girls like, you know, two sisters think he's cute and whatever, but it's not really about that. It's really about family and how important sibling relationships are. And that connects with people. Even if, you know, you're not a 15-year-old girl, you'll still recognise yourself in those characters. And that's what works, I think. That's what connects with judges and audiences and makes your film go places.
Cool. If people want to see Tegan the Vegan, where can they see that?
They can see it on teganthevegan.net. So it's on Vimeo, and you just Google Tegan the Vegan short film, you'll find it. But it is on the website teganthevegan.net.
And Della Morte, when, like, I know it's a Flickerfest that's happened. What's next?
It's going on its festival run now. So Flickerfest was the first big festival to screen it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get into a bunch of others and you'll be able to see it, you know, at various festivals. Eventually it'll go online, but at the moment it's on its festival run.
Well, thank you for chatting, and thank you for talking on my podcast.
No, thank you. Oh, can I just say, the film you made, where all the black and white film, this was one of the early Epitaph. Where you had all those people lying down in the middle of Civic Square. That shot I still think of it. It's one of my favourites of all of Lights Canberra films. What time of day did you shoot that?
6:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Oh, wow.
It was dead. We were so worried that there would be people there, and we were preparing for to tell, can you move away? But it was dead. It was absolutely, and it wasn't until at least 8 o'clock. And we were disappointed with how many people turned up, but it just worked out really well. It's
so
a
good.
Very memorable shot.
The idea of seeing such a well-known Canberra location with everybody lying dead, basically, on the ground. It still strikes me. Still hits me here.
2005 that was. A long time ago.
But it's so good, and it stays. You know, some things stay with you, and that moment in that film stayed with me.
Since I last spoke to Marissa earlier this year, Della Morte Carousel of Shame has now gone on to be selected in a number of film festivals, including the Atom Awards, where it was a finalist for Best Animation, the St Kilda Film Festival, and it received a nomination at the Perth Revelation Film Festival. The film was also shortlisted for Best Animation for this year's AACTA Academy Awards, and it won Best Film at the Canberra Short Film Festival. You can find out more about the film at delamortica.com. On our next episode, Russell and I explore Hollywood's remake culture that has taken hold in the last decade, where audiences seem to look for the familiarity over originality, and how this could affect the future marketing plan for Alice.
Film Rhapsody is produced by Dan Sanguinetti and Russell Lee for Sanguineti Media. Head to sanguinetimedia.com.au to subscribe to all our episodes.
Oh, I didn't record it.